The morning light came softly through the cracks of the thin curtain, landing on the small face of a girl who had already been awake for hours. Her name was Maria, and at 16 she had learned that life rarely gave her time to rest. The sound of dripping water from the ceiling was the same sound she had heard every night for as long as she could remember. The roof above her bed had a small hole, and when it rained she used a bucket to catch the water. Sometimes it filled halfway by morning. The house was small, made of wood that had lost its color years ago. The walls were thin enough that the wind sometimes found its way in, whistling through the cracks. But to Maria it was still home. Inside she could hear her younger brother Leo breathing softly in his sleep. He was only 9, and Maria always made sure he had the warmest blanket, even if it meant she shivered through the night. Maria's mother worked long hours at a small cafe in town. She left before sunrise and came back after dark, her hands tired and her eyes heavy. She never complained, but Maria could see the pain in her face. Their father had left years ago, and since then, it had just been the 3 of them. Money was always short, food was never enough, and dreams often had to wait. That morning, Maria got up quietly so she wouldn't wake Leo. She went to the corner of the room where they kept a small wooden box. Inside were a few coins, the last of what was left from her mother's pay. Maria counted them slowly, one by one. It wasn't much, but it would buy bread and maybe a few eggs if she was lucky. She washed her face in a small metal bowl filled with cold water, tied her dark hair back, and put on her faded blue dress, the only one she had for school. The hem was torn and the sleeves were too short, but she always tried to keep it clean. Before leaving, she checked on Leo again. She smiled softly as she saw him clutching the small stuffed bear she had made out of old fabric. He never went to sleep without it. She whispered, "I'll bring you something nice today," even though she wasn't sure she could. The walk to school was long, nearly an hour, and the cold morning air bit at her fingers. She walked past houses much larger than hers, ones with real windows, cars, and gardens full of flowers. Sometimes she wondered what it would feel like to live there, to open a fridge full of food, or to have shoes that didn't have holes at the toes. But she never felt envy. She always thought maybe one day, but for now I'll just keep walking. When she arrived at school, the bell had just rung. A few students whispered and glanced at her as she entered the classroom. Her books were second-hand, the covers torn, the pages yellowed. She didn't mind, though. She loved reading. Words were her way of escaping. During lunch, while most students unpacked sandwiches and snacks, Maria quietly took out a small piece of bread wrapped in newspaper. It was dry, but she ate it slowly, pretending it was enough. That day, as she sat under the big oak tree in the schoolyard, she saw an old woman sitting near the gate. Her clothes were dirty and her hands were trembling. She looked tired, hungry, and lost. Maria hesitated for a moment, then looked down at her bread. She only had one piece left. Her stomach was still empty, but something inside her pushed her to stand up. She walked over to the woman and said softly, "Would you like this, ma'am?" The old woman lifted her head, her eyes watery and unsure. "Are you sure, child?" she asked. Maria nodded with a smile. "Yes, please take it." The woman accepted it with shaking hands. "Thank you," she whispered. "No one's spoken to me all day." Maria smiled again, then quietly went back to her spot. Her stomach growled, but she felt a strange warmth inside her chest. It wasn't food, but it was something better, a kind of peace that she couldn't explain. When classes ended, Maria walked home slowly, feeling the weight of the day. She stopped by the small grocery store near the bus stop. The owner, a kind older man named Mr. Ellis, saw her looking at the bread section. "Out of money again, Maria?" he asked with a gentle smile. She nodded shyly. "Just a little short. I'll bring more next week." He sighed and handed her a small loaf. "Take it. Tell your mother I said hello." Maria tried to refuse. "I can't, sir. I don't have enough." He waved his hand. "You'll pay me when you can." "Go on now." She thanked him softly and hurried home. When she reached their small house, Leo ran out to greet her. "Maria, you're back!" His eyes went straight to the bread in her hands. "Yes," she said, smiling. "And look what I got." They sat together at the small table, and she cut the loaf into pieces so it would last 2 days. As they ate, she listened to Leo talk about his day at school, how he drew a picture of their house and told his teacher that one day he'd fix the roof for his sister. Maria laughed, her heart swelling with both pride and sadness. That night, their mother came home late, exhausted. Her uniform smelled faintly of coffee and detergent. Maria stood up quickly and helped her sit down. "Mama, I brought bread from Mr. Ellis. He said you should say hello." Her mother smiled weakly. "He's always been kind." "Did you eat, my love?" Maria nodded. "Yes, we did. Don't worry about us." But her mother knew her daughter's habits. She placed a hand on Maria's cheek and whispered, "You always say that, but I can see it in your eyes." Maria just smiled and said, "I'm fine, Mama." When everyone went to bed, Maria sat by the small window looking out at the dark sky. The moonlight touched her face and she thought about the old woman from earlier that day. She wondered where she was sleeping, if she had eaten the bread, if she felt alone. Then she thought about her own life, the broken roof, the hunger, the struggle. And yet she didn't feel angry. She only wished she could do more. The next morning came too soon. The rain had returned, soft but steady. Drops fell through the roof again, filling the bucket near her bed. Maria got up and grabbed a cloth to dry the floor. She could hear Leo coughing in his sleep. It wasn't bad yet, but the house was always cold and she worried he might get sick. When she left for school, she wore her thin jacket and carried her books wrapped in a plastic bag. The path was muddy and her shoes were soaked by the time she reached the main road. Still, she smiled at the people she passed, even though most didn't smile back. At school, her teacher noticed her wet clothes and called her aside after class. "Maria, are you all right at home?" the teacher asked softly. Maria nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am. We're fine." The teacher studied her face for a moment, then sighed. "You're a brave girl, Maria. Keep studying hard. You have a good heart." That afternoon on her way home, Maria saw the same old woman again, sitting in the same place under the same tree. The rain had stopped, but she looked colder than before. Maria felt her heart twist. She walked over and handed the woman her scarf, the only one she owned. "You'll catch a cold," she said gently. The woman took it with shaking hands. "Child, why do you keep helping me?" "You have nothing yourself," Maria smiled faintly. "Because I know what it feels like to have nothing." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "You're an angel," she whispered. Maria shook her head. "No, just someone who wants to make the world a little better." As she walked home that day, the wind felt colder, but she didn't regret giving away her scarf. She pulled her thin jacket tighter and whispered to herself, "It's okay." She needed it more. When she got home, Leo greeted her again, smiling as always. The house was dim but warm with their laughter. They didn't have much, just bread, a candle, and each other. Maria went to bed that night tired but calm. She thought about how people often said she had nothing, but as she lay there, listening to her brother's soft breathing and her mother's quiet humming from the next room, she realized she had everything that mattered. She didn't know that the small acts of kindness she gave so easily, a piece of bread, a scarf, a smile, were already changing lives in ways she couldn't see. For now, she only knew how to give, and somehow that was enough. The days began to grow colder and the wind carried a chill that made the small wooden house feel even smaller. Maria could see her breath in the air every morning when she woke up. The little fire they made from leftover wood didn't last long, and sometimes they went to bed wearing their jackets. Her mother's cough had gotten worse. It started as something small, but now it came often and sounded heavy. Every time Maria heard it, she felt a tightness in her chest. She knew her mother was tired. She had been working double shifts at the cafe, hoping to catch up on rent and buy medicine. One night after her mother came home late, Maria noticed how pale she looked. Her hands were shaking as she tried to pour herself a cup of tea. "Sit down, Mama," Maria said softly. "I'll make it." Her mother smiled weakly and sat on the old wooden chair. "I'm fine, my love. Just a little tired." But Maria could see that it wasn't just tiredness. There was something deeper. Her mother had been skipping meals to make sure Leo ate enough. She had even sold her favorite pair of shoes last week just to pay for electricity. Maria wanted to help more, but she was only 16. Jobs for girls her age were rare, and school already took most of her day. Still, that night, as she lay awake listening to the rain, she made a decision. The next morning, she walked to the market after school instead of going straight home. She asked around quietly if anyone needed help cleaning or running errands. Most people shook their heads. But just as she was about to give up, an older woman who ran a small laundry shop called out to her. You're the girl who helps her mother, right? The woman asked. Maria nodded. Yes, ma'am. I could use some help folding clothes and sweeping in the evenings, she said. It's not much pay, but it's honest work. Maria's face lit up. I'll do it. I can start today. From that day on, she worked after school at the laundry shop. The pay was small, but it was something. Every coin she earned went straight into a jar she kept hidden under her bed. She told her mother she stayed late at school to study, not wanting to worry her. The work was tiring. By the time she got home, her back hurt, and her hands smelled like detergent, but she didn't complain. She only thought of Leo and her mother. Weeks passed, and she started noticing the difference. She could buy a little more bread, sometimes even milk for Leo. Her mother smiled more often now, though the cough still lingered. But with every passing day, Maria grew thinner. She often gave her portion of dinner to Leo, pretending she had already eaten. Her stomach would ache at night, but she told herself it didn't matter. One evening, as she was walking home from work, she saw something move in the corner near an alley. She turned her head and saw a small dog, shivering in the cold. It was thin, its ribs showing, its fur wet from the rain. It looked at her with big, scared eyes. Maria stopped. She couldn't just walk away. She knelt down slowly and whispered, "Hey there, little one. Are you lost?" The dog didn't move at first. She tore off a small piece of bread she had saved for herself and placed it on the ground. The dog hesitated, then crawled forward to eat it. "Poor thing," she said softly. "You must be hungry." She wrapped the dog in her scarf and carried it home, even though she knew her mother would worry about feeding another mouth. When she arrived, Leo's eyes went wide with excitement. "A dog! You brought a dog!" he shouted, hugging the little creature. Her mother sighed, but there was a faint smile on her face. "Maria, we can't even feed ourselves. What will we give him?" Maria looked down at the dog and then back at her mother. "He has no one else. Maybe he needs us as much as we need him." Her mother didn't argue. From that night on, the dog became part of their family. Leo named him Toby. He slept near their bed, keeping them warm during the cold nights. Somehow, even with one more mouth to feed, their small home felt a little less lonely. The next few weeks were tough. The cafe where Maria's mother worked reduced her hours because business was slow. The rent notice came again, printed in bold red letters. Maria saw her mother staring at it late at night, her eyes full of worry. "Don't worry, Mama," Maria said one evening, placing a few coins on the table. "I'm helping now. We'll be okay." Her mother looked at her with surprise. "Where did you get this?" Maria hesitated, then smiled. "Just helping at school events. They give me a small thank you." It wasn't a complete lie. She did help. But she didn't want her mother to know she was working long hours. Days turned into weeks, and Maria began to feel the weight of it all. Her body ached, her hands were rough, and sometimes she fell asleep over her school books. Yet she never stopped smiling in front of Leo. She didn't want him to see her tired. One afternoon at school, her teacher called her aside. "Maria," she said gently, "you've been very quiet lately. Are you feeling all right?" Maria nodded quickly. "I'm fine, ma'am. Just a little tired." Her teacher gave her a kind look. "You know, you don't have to carry everything alone. It's okay to ask for help." Maria smiled politely. "I know, but I'm okay." As she walked home that day, her legs felt heavier than usual. She tried to ignore the dizziness in her head. When she reached home, she saw Leo playing with Toby outside. Their laughter filled the air, and she forgot her tiredness for a moment. That night, she found her mother sitting by the window, staring into the dark. "What's wrong, Mama?" Her mother sighed. "I went to the doctor today. He says I need to rest for a while." Maria's heart sank. "But what about work?" Her mother looked away. "They said they'll hold my job for 2 weeks, but after that..." Maria didn't let her finish. She took her mother's hands and said, "It's all right. I'll work more. You just get better." Her mother shook her head. "You're just a child. You shouldn't have to do this." Maria smiled softly. "I'm your daughter. That's what I should do." That night she cried quietly after everyone had gone to bed. The fear of losing everything pressed down on her, but she refused to let it show. The next morning she went to the laundry shop early and asked the owner if she could work extra hours. "I can clean the back room or wash the floors," she said. The woman looked at her kindly. "You're too young to work so much, child." "Please," Maria said softly. "It's important," the woman sighed. "All right, but you must promise to rest sometimes." Maria nodded, though she knew she wouldn't. The days became longer. She would go to school, then to the laundry, then home to cook and clean. Her eyes grew tired, her body weak. Yet she found small moments of joy. Leo's laughter, Toby's wagging tail, her mother's gentle smile when she managed to eat a little soup. One evening, as she walked home under the dim streetlights, she saw something familiar. The same old woman she had helped before sitting on the same bench. She was wearing the scarf Maria had given her. The woman smiled when she saw her. "It's you again, my dear girl." Maria smiled back, though she was tired. "I'm glad to see you safe," the woman nodded. "You gave me more than food that day. You gave me hope." Maria's eyes softened. "That's all I wanted." They spoke for a few minutes, and then Maria walked home. As she reached her street, she looked up at the night sky. The stars were faint, hidden behind clouds, but she could still see a few. She whispered to herself, "Things will get better. They have to." When she got home, Leo was asleep, his head resting on Toby. Her mother was still coughing softly, her face pale in the candlelight. Maria covered her with a blanket, then sat beside her, watching her breathe. She didn't have much. No fancy clothes, no new shoes, no money to spare. But she had love, and she had hope. That was what kept her going. In a world that often looked the other way, she was determined to keep giving, no matter how little she had. She didn't know it yet, but every small act, every sacrifice, was leading her toward something far greater than she could imagine. For now, she just closed her eyes and whispered a quiet promise to herself, that she would keep going for her mother, for Leo, and even for the little dog who found warmth in their broken home, because that's what she did. She gave everything, even when she had nothing. The winter that year came earlier than anyone expected. The mornings were darker, and the air outside bit at the skin like tiny needles. Maria woke up each day before sunrise, wrapping herself in her thin shawl, and quietly prepared a small breakfast for Leo, before heading to the laundry shop. The work had grown harder as the holidays approached. People brought in piles of clothes, and the shop stayed open late into the evening. Her mother's health had not improved. The doctor had said she needed medicine and proper rest, but both things cost money. So Maria worked more and ate less. Sometimes she'd go 2 days with only a few pieces of bread. Her body was beginning to show the strain. Her cheeks had lost their color and her hands were always cold, but she still smiled when Leo looked at her. "Are you tired, Maria?" Leo asked one morning as she tied his school shoes. She smiled softly. "Maybe a little, but it's okay. I like keeping busy," he frowned. "I wish I was older so I could help you." Maria kissed his forehead. "You help me just by studying hard. One day you'll do big things, and that will make everything worth it." Leo hugged her tightly before running off to school. Watching him go gave Maria the strength to face another long day. That afternoon at school there was an announcement. A local company was offering a scholarship to one student who showed both good grades and strong character. The winner would have their school fees covered for the next 2 years. For most of the students, it was a dream opportunity. For Maria, it was more than that. It could change everything. Her teacher, Mrs. Roberts, encouraged her to apply. "You're one of the brightest students, Maria," she said kindly. "You deserve this chance," Maria nodded. "Thank you, ma'am. I'll think about it." But that night when she got home, she saw her mother lying on the bed coughing again. The medicine bottle was empty. Leo sat beside her, worried. Maria felt her heart sink. She knew that if her mother didn't rest soon, things could get worse. The next day at school, she overheard another girl named Clara talking to her friend. Clara's father had lost his job, and their family was struggling to pay rent. She was crying quietly, saying that if she didn't get the scholarship, she'd have to leave school. Maria sat in silence, thinking about it the whole day. When Mrs. Roberts handed out the forms for the scholarship, Maria took one but didn't fill it out. She folded it neatly and slipped it into her bag. That evening, she stayed behind to speak with her teacher. "Ma'am," she said softly, "I think Clara should get the scholarship. She needs it more than I do." Mrs. Roberts looked surprised. "But Maria, you need it too." "Why would you give it up?" Maria smiled faintly. "Because she might lose her chance to study. I'll find another way." Her teacher stared at her for a long moment before saying, "You have a rare heart, Maria. The world doesn't see many like you." Maria simply nodded and went home. She didn't tell anyone what she had done. The following weeks became even more difficult. Her mother's health worsened, and the cough often kept them all awake at night. The little dog, Toby, stayed by her mother's bed as if he understood something was wrong. One morning, Maria went to the laundry shop, but halfway through folding clothes, her vision blurred. She felt dizzy and tried to steady herself, but her legs gave way. The next thing she knew, she was lying on the floor and the owner of the shop was kneeling beside her. "Maria, are you all right?" the woman asked, alarmed. Maria blinked, her face pale. "I'm fine. I just didn't sleep much." "You fainted, child," the woman said firmly. "When was the last time you ate?" Maria didn't answer. She couldn't remember. The woman sighed and handed her a sandwich. "Eat this. You can't work yourself to the ground. You're still young." Maria took the food with trembling hands. She wanted to cry, not because of the fainting, but because someone had been kind to her. That evening, she walked home slowly. The streets were glowing with lights from shop windows. Bright, colorful decorations for the holidays. People laughed as they carried gifts and bags of food. Maria watched them quietly, a faint smile on her lips. She didn't envy them. She just hoped that one day she could give Leo a Christmas like that. When she reached home, she found Mrs. Roberts waiting outside their small house. Maria's heart skipped. "Ma'am, what are you doing here?" Mrs. Roberts smiled gently. "I came to see you, dear. May I come in?" Maria hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Inside, her mother tried to sit up to greet her, but the teacher insisted she stay lying down. "I heard about your mother's health," Mrs. Roberts said softly. "And about how hard you've been working. You didn't tell anyone." Maria looked down, embarrassed. "I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for us." Mrs. Roberts smiled sadly. "It's not pity, Maria, it's care. There's a difference." She placed a small envelope on the table. Some people from the school and the cafe wanted to help. "It's not much, but it should cover medicine and food for a while." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "I can't take this." "Yes, you can," Mrs. Roberts said firmly. "You've spent your life giving to others. Let someone give to you for once." Maria finally nodded, tears falling silently down her cheeks. The next few days were the first time in months that she saw her mother smile again. With the new medicine and food, her strength slowly began to return. Leo was happier too, and Toby wagged his tail more than ever. The small house, though still poor, felt full of light again. One evening, as they sat together eating soup, Leo said, "Maria, guess what? The teacher said someone told the class about a girl who helps everyone, even when she's hungry. She said the girl is the kindest person she's ever known." Maria laughed softly. "That's nice, Leo. Sounds like a good story." Leo nodded eagerly. "I think she was talking about you." Maria looked down, smiling. "Maybe, but kindness doesn't need a name." Later that night, when everyone was asleep, Maria sat by the window, staring at the stars. She thought about how everything had changed in just a few weeks. She had fainted, lost work hours, and nearly broken down. But somehow life had found a way to lift her up again. She realized something that night. The more she gave, the more life gave back in small, quiet ways. Through people's kindness, through the warmth of her family, through simple things like laughter and light. But even with things improving, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that her journey wasn't over. She wanted to do more, to help more people like the woman at the gate, like the struggling families she saw in her town. The next morning, she went back to school, feeling lighter. When she walked through the gates, her classmates smiled at her differently this time, not with pity but with admiration. Someone had told them about what she did for Clara, about her fainting at work, about her family's struggle. Maria blushed under their kind looks. She wasn't used to attention. During the lunch break, Clara approached her. "Maria," she said softly, "I know what you did. You gave up the scholarship for me." Maria shook her head quickly. "No, it's okay. You needed it more." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand. That scholarship, it changed everything for us. My father found a new job and we're moving to a better place. I can't ever thank you enough," Maria smiled. "Then promise me something. Help someone else one day. That's how you can thank me." Clara nodded, wiping her tears. "I promise." That night, Maria walked home with a quiet sense of peace. The cold air brushed her face, but she didn't mind. She felt stronger now, not in her body, but in her spirit. When she reached home, her mother was waiting at the door, looking better than she had in weeks. "Come in, my love," she said with a smile. I made soup. A friend from work brought fresh vegetables. Maria hugged her tightly. "I'm so glad you're getting better." Her mother kissed her hair. "You're the reason we're still standing, Maria. You gave everything you had, and somehow you've given us hope too." Maria didn't answer. She just held her mother's hand, feeling the warmth of it, something she'd feared losing. As they ate dinner together, Leo fed small pieces of bread to Toby, laughing when the dog licked his fingers. Their laughter filled the small room, echoing softly against the walls. Maria looked around and thought, maybe this is what real wealth looks like. Not money or things, but love that never runs out. That night, before she went to sleep, she whispered quietly into the dark, "Thank you." She didn't know who she was thanking, maybe life, maybe fate, maybe the world itself, but she meant it. Because even though she had started with nothing, she had somehow gained everything that truly mattered. And deep down, she knew that her story wasn't finished yet. It was only beginning. The first sign that things were starting to change came on a bright morning near the end of winter. The sun finally broke through the clouds after weeks of rain. The streets sparkled with leftover puddles and the air smelled fresh. Maria stood outside her small house holding a bucket of water to wash the steps. For the first time in months, she felt a small spark of hope. Her mother's health had slowly improved. The medicine and rest had made a difference. The cough was still there, but not as bad as before. She could now move around the house again and even help Maria cook. Leo was growing fast too, always cheerful, always full of questions about the world. Maria had started going back to school regularly after missing a few weeks from exhaustion. Her teachers and classmates greeted her warmly, and something in their eyes had changed. They no longer saw her as the quiet girl with worn shoes. They saw her as someone strong, someone who gave everything even when she had nothing. One afternoon, as Maria sat in class taking notes, Mrs. Roberts walked in with a smile on her face. "Class," she said, "our school has been chosen for a special community project. We'll be collecting food and clothes for families in need. I'd like one student to help lead the project. Any volunteers?" The room went quiet for a moment. Then one of the students raised a hand. "Maria should do it." Soon others joined in. "Yes, let Maria lead it." Maria looked up surprised. "Me?" Mrs. Roberts smiled warmly. "Yes, Maria. I can't think of anyone better." Maria hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. "All right, I'll do my best." That week became one of the busiest of her life. After school, she helped organize boxes, made posters, and talked to people around the town. She visited shops asking for donations. Some people ignored her. Others smiled and gave what they could. She didn't realize that her story had already spread quietly through the town. Stories of the girl who gave away her food, who helped the old woman, who took care of her family without asking for anything in return. People were moved by it, and slowly, they began to open their hearts. One evening, Maria came home with several boxes of food and clothes. "Mama, look what we collected today," she said, her eyes shining. Her mother covered her mouth, speechless. "So many things." "Maria, this is more than I've seen in years," Maria smiled. "We're not keeping it all, Mama, it's for others too. There are families nearby who have even less than us." Her mother looked at her, tears in her eyes. "You're just like your grandmother," she whispered. She also gave everything she had to others. "I see her spirit in you." Maria hugged her mother tightly. "Then I'm proud to be like her." The next day, Maria and her classmates delivered the boxes around town. They visited old houses, small apartments, and tiny shelters where families were struggling. Everywhere they went, people smiled and thanked them. At one house, Maria knocked on the door, and when it opened, she froze. Standing there was the same old woman she had helped months ago, the one she'd given her lunch to and later her scarf. But now the woman looked different. Her hair was neatly tied, her clothes clean, and there was a gentle glow in her eyes. The woman smiled the moment she saw her. "I was hoping I'd see you again." Maria blinked, shocked. "You look so well." The woman laughed softly. "I found work at a bakery. Someone gave me a chance. You gave me hope when no one else did. I never forgot that." Maria felt her throat tighten. "I didn't do much." "You did more than you think," the woman said. "Your kindness saved me, and now I try to help others too." Maria smiled, fighting back tears. "I'm so happy for you." When she left, the woman placed something in her hand, a small wooden heart pendant tied with a thin string. "Keep this," she said, "to remind you that what you give always finds its way back to you." Maria wore that pendant every day from then on. As the community project continued, the school became full of boxes, food, clothes, blankets, shoes, and even toys for children. People from all around the town came forward to help. Some brought donations. Others offered time. Maria couldn't believe how much love could grow from one small act. Mrs. Roberts often watched her with quiet pride. "You've started something wonderful, Maria," she said one afternoon as they sorted through clothes. "People just needed someone to remind them how good giving feels." Maria smiled. "I didn't start anything, ma'am. I just did what I could." But Mrs. Roberts shook her head. "No, child. You lit a spark." Soon Maria's little town was buzzing with stories about the girl who gave everything. A local newspaper even came to the school to write about the project. The reporter asked to speak with Maria. She blushed and looked down, not knowing what to say. "I didn't do this for attention," she said quietly. "I just wanted to help." The reporter smiled. "That's exactly why people should hear your story." The next week, Maria's name appeared in the newspaper. Her photo, shy smile, messy hair, holding a box of donated clothes, was printed under the headline, "The Girl with Nothing Who Gave Everything." Her mother cried when she saw it. "I'm so proud of you," she said, hugging her tightly. Leo beamed. "My sister is famous now." Maria laughed. "No, I'm not. I just helped a little." But the story didn't end there. After the article came out, more help began pouring in. A local doctor offered to check on her mother for free. The bakery where the old woman worked sent bread to their house every week. A group of college students started a fundraiser to help with school supplies for children in need, naming it Maria's Hope Project. Maria couldn't believe it. Every time someone helped another person, she felt joy fill her chest. She didn't care about recognition. She only cared about what it meant, that kindness had spread. One evening, Mrs. Roberts visited again, carrying a small envelope. "Maria," she said softly, "I have some news. There's a charity organization that read the article about you. They want to meet you." Maria's eyes widened. "Me, why?" "They run scholarships and community programs for young people who make a difference," Mrs. Roberts explained. "They said they were inspired by you." Maria shook her head in disbelief. "But I didn't do anything special." Mrs. Roberts smiled. "That's what makes you special." A few weeks later, Maria met with the charity representatives. They asked her questions about her story, her family, and her dreams. She spoke honestly in her quiet way, about her life, the struggles, the small joys, the lessons she had learned. At the end of the meeting, one of them said, "Maria, we'd like to offer you a full scholarship to continue your studies, and if you'd like, you can help us with our community programs." Maria froze. She couldn't find words. Her dream, the one she'd buried under all her worries, was suddenly standing right in front of her. "Thank you," she whispered finally, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'll do my best." When she told her family the news that night, her mother hugged her tighter than ever before. "You see?" she whispered. "Good things find their way to good hearts." Leo jumped up and down with excitement. "Maria's going to help more people," he shouted. Maria smiled, wiping her tears. "Yes, Leo, that's the plan." In the following days, Maria continued her work with the same humility. Even as people began to recognize her, she never let it change her. She still helped her mother, still worked part-time when needed, still gave her lunch to someone who needed it more. The little wooden pendant stayed around her neck, a quiet reminder of the journey she'd walked. One night, as she sat by the window again, watching the stars flicker in the sky, she thought about everything that had happened. The cold nights, the hunger, the fainting spells, the tears, they all led her here. And now, her world had changed, not because of luck, but because of love, sacrifice, and faith. Her mother came and sat beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You've given so much, Maria," she said softly. "But somehow you've brought even more back to all of us." Maria smiled and leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "Maybe that's how giving works, Mama. When you give from your heart, it always finds its way home." Outside, the wind was calm, carrying the scent of spring. The world was still far from perfect. But for Maria and her family, It finally felt full of light, and though she didn't know what the future held, she had already made up her mind she would keep giving, keep helping, keep believing. Because that was who she was, the girl with nothing who gave everything. Years passed and life slowly began to change for Maria and her family. The small house that once felt cold and empty now carried the warmth of laughter and love. The roof was finally fixed by some kind neighbors, and new curtains hung by the window that used to leak rain. The shelves that were once bare now held books, candles, and even a small vase of wildflowers that Maria liked to pick from the nearby field. Her mother's health had improved greatly. She worked part-time at a local cafe, and although her pay wasn't much, it was enough. Leo had grown taller and stronger. He loved school and dreamed of becoming a teacher one day. And Maria, the girl who once gave away her lunch, her time, and her energy for others, had become a young woman with dreams bigger than her past. She had used her scholarship well. The organization that had discovered her story had given her the chance to study social work in a nearby city. At first she was nervous. Leaving her family behind was not easy, but her mother encouraged her every step of the way. "Go," she had said. "You've spent your whole life helping others. Now let the world help you grow." The city was larger than anything Maria had ever known. The tall buildings, bright lights, and crowded streets made her feel small at first. But she carried the same spirit that had guided her through everything: kindness, determination, and a quiet strength. At the university, she made friends who admired her story, but even more, admired her humility. While others talked about success and competition, Maria talked about compassion and community. She spent her free time volunteering at shelters, visiting hospitals, and mentoring children who had no one to guide them. There was one evening she would never forget. It was during her first winter at the university. The air was cold and she was on her way back from a volunteer center. As she walked, she saw a small boy sitting on the side of the road, shivering under an old blanket. He looked lost and frightened. Without a second thought, Maria sat beside him. "Hey," she said softly. "Are you okay?" The boy looked at her with wide eyes. "I lost my mother," he whispered. "She told me to wait here, but she didn't come back." Maria felt a deep ache in her heart. She took off her scarf, the one her mother had given her before she left home, and wrapped it around the boy. "You're not alone," she said gently. "I'll help you." She called the local authorities and stayed with him until they arrived. Before leaving, the boy held her hand tightly and said, "Thank you. You're like a hero." Maria smiled softly. "No, I'm just someone who understands." That night, as she walked home under the streetlights, she thought of how far she had come. From the hungry girl who once shared her lunch to the woman who now shared hope. Over the next few years, Maria completed her studies and graduated with honors. Her mother and Leo came to the ceremony, sitting proudly in the front row. As Maria walked across the stage to receive her diploma, the crowd cheered, but her eyes searched only for her family. When she saw them smiling through their tears, she felt a rush of gratitude that words could never describe. After graduation, Maria began working with a nonprofit organization that helped poor families and orphaned children. She traveled to small towns, villages, and even cities where children were left without food, care, or education. Everywhere she went, she brought the same gentle kindness that had once saved her own family. One afternoon, while visiting a shelter in a rural area, she met a little girl who reminded her of herself. Thin, quiet, and shy, with eyes that held too much sadness for her age. The girl had lost her parents and rarely spoke to anyone. Maria sat beside her and said softly, "You don't have to talk, but I'll sit here with you if that's okay." The girl nodded slightly. They sat together in silence for a while, just watching the rain fall outside the window. Then, after a long pause, the little girl whispered, "Will things ever get better?" Maria smiled gently. "Yes," she said. "They will. Maybe not all at once, but little by little. Sometimes the smallest kindness can change everything." The girl looked at her and said quietly, "Like you being here?" Maria nodded, her heart full. "Exactly like that." From that day, the girl started talking more, smiling more, and joining other children in their activities. Maria often visited her, bringing books and snacks. The bond they formed reminded Maria why she had chosen this path, because love and kindness never go to waste. Years continued to pass, and Maria's name became known in many places. People called her the girl with the golden heart. She was invited to speak at schools and events, but she always spoke humbly, never taking credit for what she did. "I was just an ordinary girl," she would say. "But I learned that even when you have nothing, you can still give everything. You can give your time, your care, your love, and those are the things that change lives." Her story inspired thousands. Donations poured into the organization she worked for, allowing them to help more families and build more shelters. But Maria never saw herself as a hero. To her, she was still the same girl who once wore torn shoes and dreamed of a better tomorrow. One day, she returned to her hometown to visit her mother and Leo. The air felt the same, warm, soft, and familiar. The streets were cleaner now, the community more alive. People greeted her with smiles and hugs. The bakery that once gave them bread for free now displayed a framed picture of Maria near the counter. The old woman she had helped years ago still worked there. When she saw Maria, she rushed over and hugged her tightly. "Look at you," she said, her eyes shining. "You've changed so many lives." Maria laughed softly. "So have you. Remember the pendant you gave me?" The woman smiled. "You still wear it?" Maria nodded, showing the small wooden heart hanging from her neck. "Every day. It reminds me that giving always finds its way back." Her mother joined them soon after, wiping her hands on her apron. "My daughter," she said proudly. "You've made the whole town proud." Maria hugged her mother and whispered, "I couldn't have done anything without you." That evening, they sat together at the table, eating dinner and sharing stories. The room was filled with laughter and warmth. Maria looked around and felt a deep peace she hadn't felt in a long time. Everything she had gone through, the hunger, the pain, the sacrifices, had led her here. Later that night, Maria stepped outside to look at the stars. The same stars she used to watch as a child when she dreamed of a better life. Only now she didn't dream for herself. She dreamed for others. For every child who felt forgotten. For every family struggling to survive. She thought of the people who had helped her along the way. Her teacher, the old woman, the kind neighbors, and she whispered a silent thank you to the sky. From that day on, Maria continued her work with even more dedication. She started her own foundation named Hearts That Give. It focused on education, shelter, and food for underprivileged children. She traveled far and wide, meeting new people and spreading her message that kindness can change the world, one person at a time. Whenever she spoke at events, she ended her speech the same way. "I was a girl who had nothing," she would say softly. "But I learned something powerful. When you give from your heart, you never lose. You only grow, because giving isn't about how much you have, but how much love you're willing to share." And as the years went by, Maria's story continued to inspire. Children grew up learning her name, not as someone rich or famous, but as someone who proved that love could heal the world. Her journey had come full circle, from hunger to hope, from giving to receiving, and from pain to purpose. And though she had started with nothing, she had indeed given everything, her time, her love, her compassion, and in return, she gained the most beautiful thing of all, a life that truly mattered. Years had passed since Maria founded her organization. Time had moved quietly, just as she always liked it. The small town where everything began had grown into a close and caring community. People helped each other without waiting to be asked. Neighbors shared food, repaired homes together, and supported one another in times of need. Kindness had become a way of life, and it all started because one young girl once refused to give up. Maria was no longer the shy girl who used to walk barefoot to school. She had grown into a graceful woman, respected and loved by everyone who met her. Yet, deep inside, she was still the same, humble, soft-spoken, and full of gratitude. Her foundation, Hearts That Give, had now helped hundreds of families. They built learning centers for children, provided small scholarships, and created training programs for single parents. Maria often said, "We are not just giving things. We are giving people a chance to believe in themselves again." Even though her work took her to many places, she always returned home once in a while to visit her family. Her mother was older now, her hair silver but her eyes still bright with pride. Leo was grown up, studying to become a teacher just like he once dreamed. Whenever Maria came home, he greeted her with a hug that nearly lifted her off the ground. "You're still the same big sister," he would say with a grin, and "You're still the same little troublemaker," she'd laugh back. They would sit outside under the old tree, talking for hours about their memories, the nights they went to bed hungry, the mornings they woke up with hope, the kindness that saved them when everything felt lost. One afternoon, as Maria visited a new shelter project near the city, she met a young woman named Lena. She was barely 20 with tired eyes and a baby in her arms. Lena had run away from a difficult situation and had nowhere to go. She was quiet, guarded and afraid to trust anyone. Maria sat beside her, smiling softly. "You're safe here," she said gently. "You don't have to talk now, but when you're ready, I'll listen." Lena nodded but said nothing. Days passed before she finally opened up. She told Maria about her hardships, how she felt invisible, how the world seemed too cruel to face. Maria listened without interrupting. When Lena finished, Maria said, "You've already taken the hardest step in asking for help. That's not weakness, Lena. That's courage." For the first time in weeks, Lena smiled. Maria made sure she had a place to stay, food to eat, and even helped her find work through the foundation. Slowly, Lena began to rebuild her life. She often followed Maria to events, watching how she spoke, how she comforted others, and how she never lost her calm no matter how busy the day was. One evening, Lena said, "You changed my life, Maria." Maria shook her head gently. "No, Lena, you changed it yourself. I only reminded you that you could." But Lena disagreed. "You don't see what you do for people. You give them back their strength." "You gave me back mine." Those words stayed with Maria for a long time. Sometimes, late at night, when the office was quiet and everyone had gone home, Maria would sit by the window, holding a warm cup of tea and thinking about the path she had walked. She remembered the little girl who once stared at the stars and wondered if life would ever get better. She remembered her mother's tired face, Leo's laughter, and the first act of kindness that had started everything, a shared lunch with a stranger. It all seemed like another lifetime, but she knew those moments had built the person she had become. Years later, her foundation was invited to collaborate with international organizations. Maria began traveling abroad, speaking at conferences, visiting poor neighborhoods in different countries, and helping build schools for children who had never sat in a classroom before. She met people from all walks of life, teachers, nurses, farmers, single mothers, and children who dreamed of learning. No matter where she went, she carried the same message in her heart. You don't need to have much to give. You just need to care. During one of her trips, Maria was invited to speak at a large event attended by people from around the world. When she stepped on stage, her hands trembled slightly. She looked at the crowd, thousands of faces waiting to hear her story. But she didn't talk about success or awards. She talked about love, about struggle, and about the beauty of giving without expecting anything back. She said, "I once thought I was poor because I didn't have enough food, clothes, or money. But then I learned that real poverty isn't about what's missing from your pocket. It's about what's missing from your heart. When your heart is full of kindness, you are richer than you think." The hall fell silent, and many wiped tears from their eyes. When she finished, the crowd stood up and applauded. But Maria didn't feel proud, she felt grateful, because every clap, every tear, every smile meant that kindness was still alive in the world. When she returned home from that trip, Maria decided to visit the school where she once studied. It looked so different now, painted walls, new books, and bright classrooms. The head teacher welcomed her warmly. "Maria, we've been waiting for you," he said. "We want to name our new library after you, the Maria Hope Library." Maria was speechless. "You don't have to do that," she said softly. "We want to," the teacher replied, "because you taught us that hope is the greatest gift." That evening, as the sun set behind the schoolyard, Maria watched children running and laughing, the sound of joy filling the air. She thought about how far the world had come from the days when she walked these same paths barefoot and hungry. Later that night, she sat by her mother's side, telling her about the trip, the event, and the new library. Her mother listened quietly, smiling. "You've done so much, my child," she said. "But what makes me proudest is that you never forgot where you came from." Maria smiled softly. "How could I, Mama? This place is my heart." Her mother took her hand. "Promise me something," she said. "No matter how far you go, never stop giving." Maria nodded, her eyes warm. "I promise." Years continued to pass, and Maria's legacy grew even stronger. She trained younger people to continue her work, including Lena, who became one of the lead coordinators at Hearts That Give. Together, they expanded their programs, reaching even more families. And though Maria grew older, her heart remained as young and kind as ever. One morning, as she walked through a new community center her foundation had built, she saw children painting a mural on the wall. One little girl ran up to her and said, "Miss Maria, we're drawing you." Maria laughed. "Really? What do I look like in your painting?"